Now we're going to see how to use constants in C++. And we're going to then progress into using operators. So to create a constant, what I am going to do is do const as constant and then followed by the type. So I may have something like my age equals 5. And I'm going to put a C out up here just so we can demarcate this. And I'll just call it defining constants like that. And we can put 2 lines here, save, and terminate. All right, so there's my constant that I want to use, and we can go ahead and see out this constant. So value of const age int variable, and I'll just use my arrows, my age, and add a carriage return, save, run this, and there we are. So that is just the output of the variable. So the thing with the constant is that you can't change it. So if I try my age equals 7 and save, and then I go ahead and build this, we get an error right off the bat. And so you can see this is underlined, indicating this is where the problem is. And then there's my hint, cannot assign to variable my age with const qualified type const int. So that will not work, and that's the benefit of a constant. And when you're creating constant, you may even want to just capitalize your variable, so all caps, something like maybe this, and you can even underscore things if it gets a little more complicated. So what we're going to do now is move into operators. And I'm just going to put another carriage return up here. All right, so operators are basically going to help us with mathematics, maybe string concatenation. So an example of this would be if I have this variable, an integer called 20, and I want to add 4 to 20, I can do something like this, plus x, and I can go ahead and put a breakpoint here. We don't need to see out that, and just let it run to that point. Let's see, go ahead and debug mode here, continue, and if we look at our variables and we have this x value is 24, and we're going to remove our breakpoint. Now another way to do this, I'm just going to comment this one out, is a shorthand notation which will do this. So this is also going to result in x equals 24. And I'm just doing 2 equals there for equality. And as well, we can do something like minus equals 5 to take 5 off of it. And so in that case, we would end up with a value of 19. So let's go ahead and just see out this. And what I'm going to do here is actually introduce input. So we've been doing output. Now we're going to capture some input from the user. So I'm just going to say, please input a value to compare with x equals 19. And I'll do semicolon there and just terminate this. But that's not all. So you can see here we're not actually doing anything with the input. So I'm going to declare an integer, initialize it at 0. So this is just going to be input. And I am going to now capture user input like this. So what that means is that we are going to have an integer called input, but we're also using it as the capture point. So when the user types something in, we will capture their value. And just to run this and see what it looks like. So down here in the console, you can see it's actually waiting for me. We didn't get a program finished or anything like that. So if I do a 20, hit enter, now you can see run finished and we're done. So that did capture the output. And in fact, if we want to, we can see out the user typed in, do something like that, and do input. And then we can just carriage return. All right, so let's try that. And I'm going to do 20. And you can see the user typed in 20. So now we can take that value and make use of it in different places. So what we're going to do is move into conditionals. And actually I want to see out this. So I'll just do something like this. We'll have a single line return, and then I'm just going to make two of them up here because we're kind of doing another demarcation. All right, so with conditionals, what we're going to do is check the value of input. And we're going to output it if it's greater than X. And what we're going to do is check if it's equal, relay that information. If it's greater than the input, so what we're typing in, we typed in 20, that would be greater. So we'll output something saying that it is greater, and then otherwise we're just going to say it's less than. So that's the only scenarios we can have: an equal, a greater than, or a less than. So for that, we are going to create a comparison. So I'm going to say if X, I'm going to use two equal signs here for equality, and what we're checking is input. And then I'm going to add curly braces. Now these curly braces are going to be the body of my conditional. So if this is true, if X is equal to whatever the user typed in, then this in here is going to execute. So in here, what is going to execute will be this right here. And we're going to say X is greater than input value. Like that. So that's all there is to this conditional. Let's go ahead and run this, in fact. So what we need for this to execute is for it to be the same. So if I type in 19, then you can see here we get our output. If I run it again and I type in 20, notice we don't get our output, we just see conditionals. So we are going to handle the additional conditional scenarios. So if X is greater than input, that's how I signify greater than. And then we're going to create another body with our braces opening, closing, into a C out. And in this one, we're going to say X is greater than input value. And actually what we want here, X is equal. Okay, we're going to do one more and just terminate this with a semicolon. So we've got two scenarios handled. Now for the next one, do we need to say something like else if X less than input? So that would certainly handle the last scenario. That's the third scenario, but we don't need to do that. We just are going to allow this to fall through. So if this is not hit, this is not hit, we're going to fall through to a final case, which we're just going to call else. So there's no comparison, it's just capturing that last one. And let's see, I don't think I got my closing brace on that one. All right, there it is. So what I'm going to do here is a C out, and what we're going to say in this case is that X is less than input value, and then we're going to do our terminator and run. So let's see what we get now. All right, so we know our equal, but let's just see if it is going to output what we've updated. So that looks good. And run it again. If we're greater, and we are, so let's see here, X is less than. So this one fell through into the else when really we should be seeing this output here. So I'm going to run this again, and now we're going to do 18. See what our input is. So X is greater than the input. All right, so let's take a look at our X, and we actually output this X value here. So it's 19, the user typed in 18, and 19 is greater than 18. We should get X is greater, which is what we get here. We had that other issue, let's see here if we go back, where we typed in 20, I think it was. I'm going to run that scenario once more. So X is 19 and input is 20, so we're just going to run that. X is less than input, so we get our fall through here. That looks good. And let's see, we had this one print out, we had our equal print out, so everything is looking like it is meeting all the criteria that we are expecting. Next, we're going to continue along the lines of logical operators, and then we're going to move into arrays.